Hello and welcome to the Satluj TV podcast. Our returning guest today is retired US Army Colonel GB Singh. Colonel Singh, amongst many things, is an expert on the Indian Constitution, being one of the very few people in existence who has researched and analysed the huge mountain of documentation and events that led to the establishment of the Constitution. This, of course, then led to his published book, The Constitution of India Simplified, and also allows us the rare opportunity to tap into his expertise to continue our series examining India's primary constitutional document in depth and, of course, its impact on the nation today. Colonel Singh, welcome and thank you for joining us once again today.
Glad to be here, sir.
Now, in our first two parts of our series analysing the Constitution, we've talked about the circumstances surrounding the drafting of the document. We've discovered the clear bias of those responsible for drafting it, essentially the Brahmins, the ruling elite of India, handed power by the British in 1947, who designed the document to ensure their dominance prevailed forevermore. We've also seen how the Soviet Union managed to deeply influence the drafting to ensure a fundamental communistic philosophy infuses the whole document. Well, today, in our third part, we're going to take a look at part 3, the actual clauses that dictate the fundamental rights of both the individual and the state. And as it turns out, there may be a pretty significant imbalance in this. Maybe unsurprising, bearing in mind it was drafted by those who wished to ensure that they retained power. So for the first time, maybe ever, in public, perhaps since the document was drafted, we're going to take a look at this in detail. Colonel Singh, let's open part 3 and you can then talk us through it. But as we do, we must perhaps judge these articles detailing fundamental rights based on two basic standards. Firstly, what fundamental rights are guaranteed to the individual? And secondly, what fundamental rights are guaranteed to the state? Colonel Singh, over to you.
Yes, sir. We can go through, again, part 3. Is article from 12 to 35. They constitute fundamental rights. Now, if you look at it, people assume that these are fundamental rights of the citizen, of the individual citizen. But in reality, when you read it, that's not what it is. Okay? So you see there's no individual fundamental right guaranteed. Now, when I use the word fundamental rights, I'm using it from the interpretation of the Western democracies, what we call fundamental rights. Secondly, what is written in these articles, you'll find that these are really called fundamental rights of the state. So let's start with article number 12. I'm going to read it and then I'll give you my reading more into it. So article 12 says, in this part means part 3. Unless the context otherwise requires, the state, now within quotes, state, includes the government and parliament of India and the government and the legislature of each of the states and all local or other authorities within the territory of India or under the control of the government of India. So right off, it embarks upon defining what state is. Now, what is so clear is, you say, where is the judiciary? That is absent here. Judiciary, according to this description, is not part of the state. So again, another feature it says government and the parliament. In other words, what they are saying is government is the executive, not the parliament. Parliament is not executive. Very clear. And so it's the same logic, same description applies to the state level. At the state level, the state legislature is not the government. Government is the executive, which is really under the governor of the state. Okay? So it makes it very clear what state is. Again, no judiciary is part of the state. Very clear according to this clause number 12. And right off is telling you state. So you can just read further that this is going to be the fundamental rights of the state. Right off. You can begin to see, right? You can begin to suspect that something more is coming that may not be suitable to to our common people. Now let's move to Article 13, and it has some clauses. So clause 1, all laws in force in the territory of India immediately before the commencement of this constitution, insofar as they are inconsistent with the provisions of this part, shall, to the extent of such inconsistency, be void. All right, you can see it's a language written by a well-trained lawyer. That's really what it is, okay? All they're saying here is, again, you go back, what is my right here as a citizen of India? Obviously, it's not giving you any right up to this point. And let's keep going further. Clause number 2 of Article 13, the state shall not make any law which takes away or abridges the rights conferred by this part, or any law made in contravention of the clause shall, to the extent of the contravention, be void. Now again a really jumbled up lawyer's language, but again it's telling you that they're not going to take away or bridge away any of the right conferred. The problem here is, and you're going to see down the line, what right have they given us? What are they talking about? What right? And you're going to be questioning this whole thing when you go back and read the whole thing and you say, what are they talking about? None of it makes sense. Number three clause of Article 13. In this clause, unless the context otherwise requires, a law which is within quotes, quotation mark, includes any ordinance, comma, order, comma, bylaw, comma, rule, comma, regulation, comma, notification, custom, or usage having in the territory of India the force of law. Now, very strange wordings. Custom. Custom is a law now. That's what it recognizes. For example, I practice the caste system. That's a custom. It has been parampara, they use the word for centuries, been going on. Well, that becomes illegal now. Okay, that becomes illegal in this article unless the context requires otherwise. So law, the caste law, under custom, is become a law now. B, let's go with the B, Article 13, Clause 3. Force, laws in force, which is again, includes laws passed or made by the legislature or other competent authority in the territory of India before the commencement of this constitution and not previously repealed, notwithstanding that any such law or any part thereof may not be then in operation either at all or in particular areas. Now, if you got a brain, you got to start jumbling with it. What the hell they're talking about? Okay, these are not that clear. They're jumbled up with the legalistic talk, and they are not meant for a common man to understand what the hell they're talking about. But obviously, right away up to now, what we have read in Article 13, there's not a single right, as we call fundamental right from a Western sense, is guaranteed to you.
Colonel Singh, can I just jump in there? Yes. And actually, one word that you picked out there and immediately jumps out to me is that word custom. So Article 3A basically states that any custom that was in existence in 49 essentially becomes law. Now, custom could be anything. There's no legislation involved. It literally could be anything. It is my custom to take out the bin and throw it into my neighbour's fence or something. That's surprisingly loose language.
When you read very carefully, as I said, the devil is in the details. When you read it carefully, you begin to shake your head. What the hell is going on here? Who are these people who wrote these things? And why nobody caught it up? This should have been caught right at that time, that none of it make any sense. First thing, it should be a fundamental rights of the citizen. Okay, and it should be spelled very clearly so the common Indian man should be able to understand.
So
Not
immediately,
be it
we,
should not be wrapped around a language that even the best educated people will be scratching their head. What
yeah,
the hell
I
they
think
talking
you're
about?
right there, Colonel
Anyway,
Singh,
let's move on.
because immediately, again, the thing that hits me immediately, we're talking about the state. It's defining the state. It's all about the state, the existing status quo. This is what is the first. This is in the first part of the fundamental rights. The citizen hasn't really entered the equation yet, has it?
Exactly. Now we missed Article 13, Clause 4. Very again interesting. Nothing in this article shall apply to any amendment of the Constitution made under Article 368. Again, 368 deals with the amendments, okay? And again, you say, what does that got to do with what we're talking about? Or we like to think about fundamental rights. But again, you begin to scratch your head, okay? But nonetheless, it is obviously, it's very clear, Article 13 gives you absolutely no fundamental right as we understand that term. Okay? All right, let's move to now Article 14. Now, Article 14 starts under a heading called Right to Equality. I mean, it says right to equality. Again, if you're not going to pay attention, if you're not going to go to details, you say, well, we have a right to equality. What does that mean? Oh, let's take a look at Article 14 now. The state shall not deny any person equality before the law or the equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. Often enough, I've seen people will say that 14 has been plucked up from one of the rights conferred in the Constitution of India. But the context is missing here, okay? The state shall not deny to any person equality before the law. Now, there's already a condition there, before the law. Now, then you got to go back to what law we're talking about. And then when you read the details of the law, and everything changes. You can pick up all these Indian laws and you say, yeah, again, you begin to scratch your head because it is wrapped under another mystery, and it just goes on. And you say, none of it make real sense. In other words, it's not really a fundamental right, okay? But it's given something to the government, to the state. Let's go number 15. Now, a few years ago, there was a movie in India. It came up on Article 15. And it made a big noise. I mean, people were talking how beautiful this Constitution is. Let's take another look at it. Closer look at it. Read the words carefully. Article 15 has clauses in it, a total of 5 clauses. So let's go to number 1. The state shall not discriminate against any citizen on grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. All right. State is not going to do that. Okay, that's a state right. Well, let's take a look into it, because what you will find as you read further down, you're going to find inconsistencies and you're going to find outright contradiction.
So, and actually, Colonel Singh, again, it's a subtlety here, and I think the subtlety is it's drafted at the state shall not discriminate. It's not the citizen shall not be discriminated against. So again, it's looking at it from the state's perspective. Exactly. Yeah, it's a nuance. It's a clever nuance. Yeah.
And when you say only of, that's another word. What does that mean? Only of. Does that mean there are other ways to discriminate other than these factors? I mean, you begin to question, and none of them, this clarity is not there. Let's go clause number 2. No citizen shall, on grounds only of, again, what the word only comes up, only of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them be subject to any disability, liability, restriction, or conditions with regard to And then you got in subclass 2, you got two subclasses. We were A, access to shops, public restaurants, hotels, and places of public entertainment, or not and, or B, the use of wells, tanks, bathing ghats, roads, and places of public resort maintained wholly or partly out of state funds or dedicated to the use of the public money, general public. I listen. I have no problem if they want to open the roads or open these public places to the untouchables. I mean, that's fine. Okay. State has maintained that they want to do something for those people, which is fine. The problem here is after 77 years since partition, the problems have not really gone away. Actually, in many places, it has become more worse. So the states hand into resolving the problems of untouchability, as we talked about it, and all the laws that go with the untouchables. It really has not made things better for the untouchables at a larger level.
And this is despite and this is despite the fact that further in this clause, it specifically references that the untouchables should not be treated as such. So, but as you're saying, the practical reality of it is it's just being completely ignored.
Exactly. What they should have done was they should have said the caste system is illegal. Period. It would have done the job, and in a very short word, it would have meant what it said. But what they're doing is they're putting so many words there, and those words are often they cause misjudgment, miseducation in the minds of innocent people. Let's go back to now 15 clause number 3. Now again, here, as I said, you're going to find inconsistencies and contradictions. Nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any special provisions for women and children. Now already you can begin to say, wait a minute. Earlier it was saying it's not going to do none of that stuff, okay, when it comes down to these kinds. Now the state wants to make special provisions for women and children. It doesn't say what. Okay? But they're going to do it. All right. Number 4. Nothing in this article or in clause 2 of Article 29, well, we haven't reached Article 29, so let's keep it on hold, shall prevent the state from making any special provision for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of Indian citizens or for the scheduled castes or the scheduled tribes. Now, as we said, if you look at scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes, you're looking at a caste. I think the word should be caste. It should be about 85% of the population, or the Hindu population specifically. What is it saying? That we can go out and violate everything that comes up in the right to equality. What they're saying is that these people will be treated differently. So right there you begin to question, where is this right to equality then? That means all citizens are not equal, because state is not going to go out and pump more, whatever you can use the word, more pump into the 85% of the population.
And can also bring up can also another subtlety that came out to me in this area is, this article immediately is talking about positive discrimination, which by definition is discrimination. But also, I also note this interesting contrast between Articles 3 and 4. 4 talks about the advancement of any, let's say, caste. But Article 3, when it comes to women and children, doesn't talk about advancement. It just talks about special provisions. Now, this arguably could easily be abused. It is discriminating. It could be used negatively. So the Constitution allows for anything negatively through legislation to target women and children. And I think it's a glaring difference between the treatment of women and children and caste. Why didn't they put the advancement of women and children? They've just said any special provision for women and children. That, to me, immediately classes women and children, firstly, discriminating them as a separate part of society. Secondly, it ties into many things that we've covered in our Perspectives programme. Women have been treated as second-class citizens for, well, not even decades, maybe centuries in India. And this seems to support that fundamental weakness in India, or certainly Hindu society.
No, you said it very well. I agree with you. Let's go number 5, clause number 5 of Article 15. Again, nothing in this article or in subclause G of clause 1 of Article 19, is stepping over as if, see, we haven't reached even 19. You can just see what they're doing. It confused the reader. Article 19 shall prevent the state from making any special provisions by law for the advancement of any socially or backward or educationally backward classes of citizens, or for the scheduled castes or the scheduled tribes, insofar as such special provisions relate to their admission to educational institutions, including private education institutions, whether aided or unaided by the state, or other than the minority educational institutions referred to in clause 1 of Article 30. Now again, one of the difficulties here is, on the surface, it sounds like that they want to help out the untouchables of the tribals and so forth. Again, they go back to 85% of the population. It gives them a right to do what they want to do under the clock of advancement. Now, as I said, today we are looking at it 77 or so, whatever years after the partition. And today, untouchable is still an untouchable. Yes, there are a number of untouchables who have become educated. But the reality is, again, the very idea of the caste system is entrenched even among them. And they are the forefront. They are at the forefront to make sure the caste system remains intact. The other factor is, when we analyze this, what has happened here is, because of the government bounties that are coming in, the public money that are coming in, that whole section of 85% has essentially become corrupt.
And
They
also,
have a free money coming. They have a free money coming in. So they are not going, they have a vested interest to keep the caste system intact.
yeah, and as you rightly say,
So
Colonel
this
Singh,
has
that
so this has
if
actually
it was,
worked against the very welfare of the people of India.
yeah, and I think you're right. And yeah, this clause is headed equality. It's all about equality. Yet this clause immediately discriminates, whether benignly or malignly. It is immediately discriminating against scheduled castes or scheduled tribes. It is setting them as a separate part of society. So it is actually not treating them as equals. And to me, this, again, it leaves it open for abuse. It is separating a part of society, as it turns out the majority of society, away into a separate box, let's call it. To me, this is apartheid dressed up in a pretty dress.
And a minority that is a minority state is doing it against 85% of the population.
Yeah.
Very strange, very odd looking. What kind of fundamental right is it?
And as you rightly say, sorry, Colonel Singh, just one final point to make here, and I think you're absolutely right, is that this must be deliberate, this whole policy to prop up the caste system. Otherwise, as you said, they would have just written a simple clause in the equal rights section to say the caste system is hereby finished. It no longer exists. They haven't done that. They are propping up the system. They're acknowledging it, they're validating it.
So again, with those two standards, there is no individual, what we call fundamental right guaranteed here. A citizen of India cannot say, this is a fundamental right guaranteed to me, as we understand the word fundamental right. But again, what it does is, it gives the authority to the state to interfere, to mingle in, and to do what they can do to take full advantage of the caste system. That's what it does, okay? Now, let's go to Article 16. Again, 16 has a bunch of subclauses. One of the things you notice here when you read these subclauses, you say, or subclauses or even clauses, you say, what the hell they're talking about? And there is an element of inconsistency and contradiction right in the text, and is subject to interpretation at every level. Let's go to number 16A. Number 1. There shall be equality of opportunity for all citizens in matters relating to employment or appointment to any office under the state. Now, right there on the surface, it looks good. It looks good for the state. The state is going to do that. But as I said, every time you pick up something and then you read further, there is an inconsistency and contradiction. And that's what you're also going to see in 16. Number 2. No citizen shall, on grounds, again the word only of religion, race, caste, sex, descent, that's another strange word, descent, place of birth, residence, or any of them, be ineligible for or discriminated against in respect of any employment or office under the state. On the surface, you can give a little positive spin to this thing. Okay, all right, state is doing, as I said, it made it complicated to understand only of. Does that mean there's some other ways to do it? Other different ways to discriminate? Okay. Number 3, nothing in this, now back again now comes out nothing, okay? Nothing in this article shall prevent the parliament from making any law prescribing in regard to the class or classes of employment or appointment or to an office under the government of or any local or other authority within a state or union territory, any requirement as to residence within that state or union territory prior to such employment or appointment. Now you can begin to scratch your head. What are they talking? Nothing. I mean, as if it sounds like there seems to be some contradiction started to pop up, okay, in the Article 16. Number four clause of Article 16. Nothing, again the word coming out, nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any provision for the reservations of appointments or posts in favor of any backward classes of citizens. Now, very, very strange. Backward classes really actually should be the backward castes. That's really what they are. Backward classes of citizens which, in the opinion of the state, is not adequately represented in the services under the state. Again, you can just see it is an opportunity to fiddle with the caste system. It really comes down to that. It's fiddling that the way, it's not a social engineering in a positive sense, because these people remain back, the low caste. It's not that they're going to be, it's an Indian state opportunity to fiddle with the system. And as I said, more often than not, they make them corrupt. And once these large bodies of citizens are made corrupt, the system remains intact. And that's what it does. Let's go number 4. This 4 clause again has subclause, 4 of them, 4A, 4B. Nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any provision for reservations in matter of promotion with the consequential seniority to any class or classes of posts in the services under the state in favor of scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes, which in the opinion of the state are not adequately represented in the services under the state. Same thing, opportunity to fiddle with the system. That's all it does. But it guarantees an untouchable, that very position stays right in there, right where they need to be, they put them right there. Okay? Now, but the untouchable now has a vested interest, because untouchable say, well, wait a minute, I'm getting this bounty free. I don't have to do anything. So it creates a system where excellence is not required anymore. Untouchable or any one of these low castes, they don't have to work hard anymore. They don't have to excel in their fields, because all these things are not guaranteed, but the government, state, is going to give them these bounties.
It's
Now you're going to say, where's
again,
these boundaries coming from?
it's positive discrimination
It's
again.
coming from somebody else.
Yeah, we've seen this in the
Exactly.
West. It's an issue that we've now got in the West of positive discrimination interfering in the system. It means people are being promoted into positions that they are not qualified for. And apart from the fact it is very patronising to those individuals promoted to, it's just undermining the whole structure of society through artificial means. It's a weakness.
Okay, now 4B. No, again, nothing. When you begin to read nothing, your hair should go up. It's wait a minute. Your antenna should say, "There's something strange going on here." Nothing in this article shall prevent the state from considering any unfulfilled vacancies of a year, which are reserved for being filled up in that year in accordance with any provisions of reservations made under Clause 4 or Clause 4A, as a separate class of vacancies to be filled up in any succeeding year or years, and such class of vacancies shall be considered together with the vacancies of the year in which they are being filled up for determining the ceiling of 50% reservations on a total number of vacancies of that year. Now, you think about it. You begin to research, what is this going on here? Is this really a right to equality? You begin to ask questions. That something is fundamentally wrong with these structures. Let's go clause number 5 of Article 16. Again, it starts with nothing. Nothing in this article shall affect the operation of any law which provides that the incumbent of any office in connection with the affairs of any religious or denominational institution or any member of the governing body thereof shall be a person professing a particular religion or belonging to a particular denomination. All right. Now again, I leave it up to you to make an interpretations of these kind of things. All it does, it gives you a cause for concern. What am I reading? Why these things are so complicated, so complex? Why they can't put it in simple ways when it means right to equality means there should be no discrimination, period. Why can't they spell it out in simple terms so a common man of India can understand it? Now let's go to, all right. Now even it becomes next one is very even funny, actually. Number 17. Now, this is quoted often by many people, how progressive this constitution is. So it starts off, untouchability within quotation marks. Untouchability is abolished, and in its practice, any form is forbidden. The enforcement of any disability arising out of the untouchability within quotation mark shall be an offense punishable in accordance with the law. Now I have read the laws that they made about untouchability. Not a single one of them ever defined what untouchability is. We assume that they're talking about the lowest of the caste, these untouchables in the caste system. Well, if you're going to keep the caste system intact, then untouchables are going to be there. And untouchables are still there today in India, about 200 to 250 million. If you're going to have untouchables, there is no way untouchability is going to go away, whatever that really means. Again, this is make a mockery of the whole thing. This is a mockery.
And actually,
Okay?
even
it is
by
only meant to show it to the world.
even by definition, if they still recognise a caste system, even though they have, apparently, at least on the face of it, they've abolished untouchability, but they are still propping up a caste system, then by simple definition, there is still going to be a bottom caste. That may not be the untouchables, but somebody is going to be at the bottom of that pyramid. Therefore, it's nonsensical.
Exactly. No, it is. Anytime you read these things carefully, as I said, the devil is in the details. Don't just look at the heading and say, bingo, it's done. No, read it carefully. And when you read it, you begin to scratch your head at the bare minimum, okay? Bare minimum. All right, let's go into 18. 18 again, has the subclause as clauses 1, 2, 3, and 4 of them. All right. Very strange. 18.1, no title not being a military or academic distinction shall be conferred by the state. Why, is that really a fundamental right? Is that really a fundamental right? Now, what are they doing? Are they joking? Or is it something about the state? That's really what it comes down to. It is an instruction for the state. It's a guidance for the state. It's not your right or my right, okay? No citizen, number 2, no citizen of India shall accept any title from any foreign state. That's strange. Very strange. Is that a fundamental right? I mean, you have to think about it. Is that really a fundamental right? Article 18, now let's look at number 3 clause. No person who is not a citizen of India shall, while he holds any office of profit or trust under the state, accept without the consent of the president any title from any foreign state. Again, you go back, again, you begin to scratch your head. They're talking. What is the nonsense? This has nothing, this has no relevance to what we today call fundamental rights. Number 4, no person holding any office of profit or trust under the state shall, without the consent of the president, accept any present, emoluments, or office of any kind from or under any foreign state. All right? I mean, again, it goes back to, these are fundamental rights, if you want to use that word inappropriately, is a right for the state. All right? State is making these kind of things. But none of these things we would call it fundamental rights from the angle of a Western ideals. We don't call these things fundamental rights. These are not fundamental rights. Now, if they call fundamental rights of the state, even that looks so bizarre. When in actuality, it is a fundamental rights of the state. But even that, it doesn't need to be spelled out like that. Okay? Again, it's up to now, what we have seen here is, for sure, there is not one individual fundamental right guaranteed here. What you have seen up to now, Article 18, up to 18, these are at the most you can say, or even at the least you can say, these are fundamental rights of the state. And we already read in Article 12 what state means. Right there. Now we're moving into Article 19. Now, 19, we can call it fundamental rights. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Sorry, Colonel Singh. I just want to jump in there, actually. And I think that is perhaps a convenient place to draw things to a close when we start to talk about the rights to freedom. Okay. But before we do close, I would like to ask a final question, actually. And it relates to the 1980s and, of course, the dreadful events of 1984, the regime of Indira Gandhi. And clause 18.4 immediately shouted out to me, hang on a second. It says, no person holding any office shall, without the consent of the president, accept any present, emolument or office of any kind from a foreign state. Now, when we look back to what happened in 1984, it's become apparent that the Soviet Union, via the KGB, were clearly propping up the government, the government of Indira Gandhi. The Congress Party and ultimately Indira Gandhi. And there is talk and evidence of financial support, should we say, of the Indira Gandhi regime. Now, firstly, that could only have happened according to the Constitution with the consent of the president. That therefore implicates the president of the time, that the president must have known about it if it was done legitimately. In reality, it probably wasn't done legitimately, and Indira Gandhi has essentially been acting directly contrary to the Constitution throughout her regime.
That's right. I mean, as I said, once you begin to make interpretations out of it, you begin, what is this? Again, what is this? We started off with fundamental rights and we assume these are fundamental rights of the citizens of India, when it turns out to be something else. They're talking something else, and every one of them is subject to interpretation in favor of the state, not in favor of the citizen. So that these guys who are running the show, they make interpretations. And you have no right to correct them. You have no right. There is not a right given there to you that you can say, hey, wait a minute, what about to my individual rights? Yeah, they don't exist. Now, 19, if we want to go today, or maybe next time, I'll leave it up to you. If we go to 19, now 19 has some semblance with what we today call the First Amendment of the US Constitution. Or we could call that as fundamental rights in a Western sense.
Indeed,
Okay?
yeah. And if
But when you get into that, and that changes too, because there's so many inconsistencies and contradictions, even in that. Okay? So should we go with 19 now?
no,
Or should we
I
move
suggest
next week?
let's leave 19 for the next time. I think we've covered a lot of ground today, which has been very interesting. I just want to sneak in one final question. Actually, I want to just go off on a slight tangent here, and I want to bring it back to the whole subject with Khalistan, because of course, once Khalistan is established, it will need its own constitution. And I think it's pretty clear that the drafting of the Indian constitution has been very much, or drafted prejudicially towards the state. What is your gut feeling? What do you think the fundamental philosophy of a Khalistan constitution will be? How do you think it will contrast to what we've covered so far?
I don't, what I don't know. Okay. I think that's the best way to say, but I do expect, being a Sikh myself, I do expect the Sikhs, if ever they get the opportunity to do something better, they will do better, okay? Because their thinking is always meant to equality for all people, whether you are a Sikh or you're not Sikh. That I know the Sikhs are capable of doing that kind of high level quality work. So I expect them, whenever they do have an opportunity, I wish they had an opportunity with the Indian Constitution, but they didn't have that. If they had that opportunity, Indian Constitution would have been a hell of a much better place, much better, granting actual fundamental rights. Actual, okay? We won't be reading this nonsense, okay? So that's the best way I can answer, that the Sikhs who actually believe in the Sikh philosophy, Sikhs' ideas of equality, justice, all that, they would not write this kind of nonsense. That's the best way that I can answer you.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful summary.
We'll look into that.
Yeah, as I say, I think that is a beautiful summary of what would happen. But unfortunately, we must leave it there, Colonel Singh. But of course, we will be talking again with you shortly to continue that discussion and indeed to go on to Clause 19 and further on. Colonel Singh, it has been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Indeed. And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.